So let's start with the roles and responsibility piece. First and foremost, it's our job to represent our members and protect their financial interests. The directors don't get involved in the operations. We leave that to our very capable management and staff, but we do set the strategic direction, and we monitor the results and goals and objectives that we set out to meet that strategic plan. We have a serious responsibility to ensure that SASCU meets the many legal requirements, and there are many. And thankfully, we belong to a country where our financial institutions have those many regulations to ensure that they remain competitive and remain stable, and to protect the finances of the members. So, the other piece I would add is I think we're charged with being ambassadors for the credit union, ambassadors in the community. And that's an important role as well, because the SASCU has a dominant market share here in town. We'd like to keep it that way. And we believe it's a very good organization that serves its community. So to fulfill those responsibilities, it's expected that directors attend all meetings and come prepared to contribute by asking questions and offering opinions. There's generally about 10 board meetings a year, and they usually happen the last Tuesday of each month in the evening. Usually last about 3 hours. And management provides us with an agenda package a week in advance, so we have opportunity to be prepared prior to the meeting. Currently, all our meetings are held via Zoom or Teams, and hopefully after the pandemic is dealt with, we'll move back to having our meetings in person and in Salmon Arm. We've saved some money as a board this year by having these meetings virtually. And so we've invested that money in the ability to have people attend virtually when their job or other responsibilities doesn't allow them to attend the meeting in person. And so, we saw that as another opportunity to facilitate people running for the board who have very busy lives and maybe can't make every meeting in person. All directors are also expected to attend the annual strategic planning session. It's held over the course of 2 or 3 days. This year, the planning session will be May 27th through 29th, and will likely be held virtually. Directors can also be expected to be assigned to 2 or 3 committees. And you can see the committees listed on the screen there. They are described in detail in your nomination package. But we could speak to them tonight if there are some specific questions you might have. Committee meetings generally happen quarterly. They're about 2 hours in length, and they are scheduled according to the 3 or 4 committee members, scheduled at a time that is mutually convenient to them. And so they can be held on different times of day or on different days of the week, depending on the committee. There's an abundance of support for directors. If you look at some of those committees and you go, oh my gosh, I don't know anything about credit and market risk, this is an example, fear not. There's huge support levels that are provided from management and from other sectors that I'll speak more to later in the presentation. But lots of supports available. So how much time does it take? I'm sure that's something that's of interest to you, because I know we're all busy even when we try to be retired. So in the first year, I'll speak from personal experience. I took up to 25 hours a month because I was really vague in some of these areas, and until I took some coursework and I had some experience under my belt, that the time to prepare for the meetings and the actual meetings in itself. Some months were up to 25 hours, other months, 0. No meetings, nothing to prepare for. So it can be very busy. Now that I'm in my 4th year, I'd say I'm averaging closer to 15 hours a month. But I just wanted to give that heads up. It is a demanding time commitment initially, at least. So it's a significant time commitment, but there also is remuneration in recognition of that time commitment. Board members are currently paid an honorarium of $250 a month, plus a stipend of $175 for each meeting attended, plus mileage when you're attending them in person. A per diem of $350 a day is paid for attendance at out-of-town meetings or conferences or professional development. And travel expenses are reimbursed as per board policy. Currently, that averages out to about $10,000 in gross pay over the course of the year. The remuneration schedule is currently under review. It's actually been under review by our governance committee for over a year. We put it on hold with the COVID situation because so it's not an appropriate time to be discussing any sort of an increase in remuneration. But our governance committee has suggested changes to keep us in keeping with other boards of similar sized credit unions. So the remuneration is a nice recognition of the role you play, but greater satisfaction, like speaking personally, comes from the role you play in the governance of a financial institution that's so important to the community. I'll pause there. If any questions so far? Seeing no hands, so I'm going to turn it over to Frank and the next slide.
Thanks, Dave. I'm going to just chat a little bit about the benefits of being a director at SASCU. I think the first phase that I talk about is the educational side of things. You're constantly being challenged to learn new things when you're a director at SASCU. And there's very good education. There's very good courses that help you manipulate your way through the different areas of being involved in a credit union or a financial institution. Another great benefit is that you're looking at it at a very high level. You don't have to get into the weeds. You're looking at it from a strategic point of view. You're looking at procedures, guidelines, policies, and those types of things. You sit down with your board members, discuss it either with Zoom or in person, which is way better. It allows you to look at where the credit union is today, where it might look like 3 to 5 years from now, and how are we going to get there. And that, with a lot of support from the management at SASCU, we sit down on a regular basis and discuss that. Another great benefit of being involved in SASCU, because we're very prominent in this community and we give back to the community so much, it is very great feeling to be around town and know that you have participated in some of the activities at Blackburn Park. You know, there's many companies and volunteer organizations that have benefited from SASCU, and it's great to be part of that. There is definitely time commitment, but it's a great feeling, and it gives you a good personal feeling. And it's one of the, I have to say honestly, since I've retired, it's one of the things that keeps you active, and it keeps you in the community. And it's been a real pleasure and an honor to be involved with SASCU. Thank you.
Next slide, please. So I mentioned earlier that there's many supports available to you as you ease into the directorship role. if you're successful in being elected, all new directors go through an orientation process. The board chair will arrange for you to meet the executive leadership team. You'll have a tour of the facilities, a review of current matters being addressed by the board, and you'll become familiar with the expectations and procedures. You'll have a meeting with the Vice President of Finance to review the current financial statements and an explanation of some of the many acronyms you'll encounter. Our executive assistant, who you met earlier, Julia, will assist you with all things practical and set you up with communication channels. And she'll also enroll you in a 6-module course called the Foundations of Governance. And it's a very good introduction to the many aspects that are expected of you as a director. You have a year to complete the modules, and they're a handy accompaniment to the meetings that you will attend, where you'll also have the opportunity to talk to seasoned directors, I call us, when you have questions about various aspects of the role. You'll note in the nomination package, there are specific professional development requirements of a director, and many very excellent courses delivered by the Credit Union Director Achievement Program. They are offered right now, they're all online, but hopefully post-COVID, they'll be offered in person as well. And over the course of the first 6 years as a director, you're expected to take many of these courses. In short, the supports are tremendous, and they allow you to build confidence in meeting your responsibilities. And speaking from experience, even though I have experience in marketing and accounting at the university level, I still felt like I was on a bit of a learning cliff in my first few meetings. But after a while, it becomes, you gain your confidence and you gain experience through the coursework and through the meetings, and it becomes manageable and more interesting. Frank or Barry, have I missed anything in the support category?
No, I think you've certainly nailed it there, Dave. It's just, there is so much support, so that if you look at a particular topic that's in the package and you're not familiar with it, rest assured that there is lots of training and support from management to guide you through those steps.
Good. Okay, any questions from our participants tonight?
Good.
Not seeing any hands. Let's go to the next slide then. So the election process, this is also in your nomination package. So we've reviewed the role, and as I say, much of that is included in the nomination package, including the dates you see on the screen. If being a director is still of interest to you, if we haven't scared you off in any way, I hope not, just want to draw your attention to some of the dates. The nomination forms deadline is December 18th, but I'd encourage you to get on those sooner than later. It's a bit arduous, but it's required by the regulations in the financial sector. And so getting on that, it'll take an hour or two to put that together for sure. So the sooner the better on that. If you're still a little hesitant, I'd still suggest filing your papers, because you could still change your mind by February the 1st. There's a deadline, which is the deadline to withdraw. You'll notice also there's director candidate interviews, and we've scheduled the week of January 11th to 15th. And during that process, which is part of the endorsement process that Frank will speak to shortly, we will pick a 45-minute slot that's mutually convenient to Frank and I and to yourself to go through an interview. And voting happens in April. the successful candidates are announced at our AGM on May 4th. And the planning session I mentioned earlier, you would be expected to attend that in May. So let's get Frank to talk a bit more about the endorsement process.
Yeah, I'd just like to say one thing on the voting.
Sure.
We have 19,000 members, and they're quite active, and they do care about the governance side of the house at SASCU. We get about double the average of voting versus other credit unions in British Columbia, which shows how active and how important SASCU is to a lot of people. So of that number I mentioned, we get between 1,500 and 2,000 people vote in our election.
Okay.
Thanks, Barry. I'll just touch briefly on the endorsement process. So the underlying fact of why we're doing it is that we are trying to get the best candidate for the board. And that includes a whole bunch of different processes, but we're looking for diverse composition in our board. That's age, cultural, many different factors go into that. And we consider the your nomination package. We also look at the interview process that you would be, if you're enrolled, that when we'd have the interview in the next month or so. And then once we've had those processes, we take it back to the nomination committee and discuss each candidate. And at the end of it, we can choose to endorse all candidates, none, or a combination of those. Incumbents that are actually running in the election are not necessarily endorsed. And so we try to be very impartial and objective in it. And the bottom line of why we're doing it is to get the best attributes and the competencies to help us with the board in the upcoming years. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. Thank you.
Okay, well, that does it for our formal presentation piece. I'm sure you must have some questions that we haven't addressed. So please ask.
Hey,
Curtis,
Jason,
I see you with a hand up. Curtis?
Yes, sorry. Frank mentioned that some incumbents who are running might not necessarily be endorsed. How many incumbents are currently running on this in this cycle?
I can answer that. We have one board member who will be retiring, will not be running again. And at this point, two candidates will have expressed interest in resubmitting their names for election purposes.
Hey, Dave, I'd just like to add one more thing that I meant to talk about in the endorsement process. We do go through it and endorse those candidates we do see fit, but the bottom line is the membership still decides who becomes, by the voting process, who comes on the board. So, you know, if for whatever reason you may or may not be endorsed, it is the membership that actually will decide who becomes the next board member.
Yeah, and that's a good question, Curtis, and just a little bit more. So we have 9 directors, and then every year 3 positions are up for re-election for a 3-year term. So this is a typical year. So there's 3 positions. Of the 3 incumbents, 1 incumbent is retiring, but 2 incumbents want to run. I'll just say that. And then the other thing I just want to mention that hasn't been mentioned is that to be eligible to run as a director, the rules of the credit union that's voted on by the membership is that the candidates have to have been a member of the credit union for a year prior to the AGM. So if you're not a member or you're just a recent member, you would have to wait for that 1 year. Now we are changing our rules this coming AGM, where then for next election, as long as you're a member prior to the election, that'll be fine. So we're getting rid of that 1 year waiting period, but for this coming election, that 1 year waiting period's in place.
I would mention one other thing. If you're thinking that to run for a director, you need to make placards and knock on doors, that is not the case. As a matter of fact, our process forbids that. You're voted based on the biography you post in your part of the election package, and which will appear on the website. And you of course are free to influence your family to vote for you, but beyond that, there's no electioneering.
Yeah, so there's 40 credit unions in BC, and we all do that because we find it's uncomfortable to put yourself out there in the community where you have to glad hand like a politician. So our rules don't allow that. But as Dave said, we take your picture, we do a bio, we put it on our website. We also do a video where we give you 4 questions to answer, and you have a minute to answer the different questions. That's also will be on our website. And you don't really need to do anything other than just, as Dave said, influence your family and friends. That's okay. And then the members vote. And and what we've found also is that those that run, sometimes they have to run 2 years in a row before they're elected, because the first time the membership doesn't know this person, and it takes a year just to get your name out there. So that's another reason to consider running, even if you're not sure. That just gets you a little bit more visible.
Thanks, Ray. I see Dawn has her hand up.
Yeah, I've got a few questions here. First one, can you talk a little bit about your directors and officers liability insurance? And I assume you have it, and just what does the current DNO look like? That's I have about 3 questions, so that's the first one.
We have directors and liability insurance, yes. As a financial institution, we're required to carry that. I mean, I can speak for a while on it, but what, Dawn, is there a certain liability or risk you're interested? I can.
No, I mean, it's a usual standard thing to be on board.
Yeah.
I mean, so I just wanted to make sure, and I would assume that the risk is even higher with a financial institution.
Yeah. So the directors are protected from any liability related to a lawsuit, unless that director was grossly negligent in some sort of fashion.
Okay.
Good question. You had 2 more?
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about the Management Credit Committee? And I just read in the package that it talks about that if it seems like it's a different process, and I assume there's no betterment or detriment because you're a board member, but I'd be interested just to have a bit more detail about what that process looks like.
Sorry, which committee is that?
The Management Credit Committee, it talks of, like, I guess if you were going for a mortgage or borrowing money, that's an extra step that they would do because you're a board member. Is that right?
Yeah, so Dave Frank, yeah. So I think what you're referring to is that as a director of a financial institution, you're deemed a related party, meaning you're deemed to have special influence over the operations of the organization. And so if a director or myself or a member of the senior management team, we apply for a mortgage, there's a little extra scrutiny before that loan is advanced to make sure that we're not taking advantage of our position as a director or as management to get a rate that we're not allowed, or to get conditions of the loan that we're not allowed, or offer security that it would not be considered of value enough to secure the loan. So it's just guarding against improper behavior. And so because we don't allow that at SASCU, we're extra careful when loans are granted to this special class of people. They get the best member rate, but they don't get better than that.
That's handled by our conduct review committee. You had one more?
Yeah, just 2 quick ones. So I saw the dates about endorsement and stuff. So if someone put their name forward, but decided but you were endorsed, but decided to withdraw by February 1st, are you still in the pipeline for future, or is it every year you have to reapply?
You would need to reapply, yes.
Every year, okay. Okay. And then just the last thing you mentioned, I mean, I remember the last time I traveled for work was a Friday in March before COVID hit. And so I travel a lot for work. So when there is a world post-COVID, so what I'm hearing is that virtually attending meetings may not be the preferred, but it will be an option.
Yes, and we've had the occasions before where someone is on their cell phone in a hotel somewhere, and there's no visual connection, and the Wi-Fi is not great. Those kind of issues, some of those you can't overcome, but we have made it possible or easier and a better way to communicate if you cannot be there in person. And so we haven't seen we've had a virtual demonstration of the new equipment, and Barry and Julie are actually on it right now. And but we hope that it will make it more accessible to people who are working or are away from home for some reason, but can still attend and participate.
Julie and I are in a small conference room. This is not the boardroom. We're still configuring the equipment for the boardroom. Yeah.
Thanks. That's it. The questions for me. Thanks.
Christopher, you have a question.
Chris is fine. That's what I go by for everything. It was mentioned that there was a 4-question video that would be produced. And in the nomination package, it also invited people to make a 1-minute video. Are those basically the same thing?
Yes. Yeah. Who am I? Why am I interested in running for the board? And why should you vote for me? I don't remember them exactly, but it's something pretty straightforward. Yeah.
Okay, but the individual who is putting forward their name for nomination is making that video, or I heard you say that you would be possibly making that video.
We would invite you into our office, and then our marketing team would make it happen.
Okay, so I'm still getting this clear in my mind. So that means what it says in the nomination package, don't worry about submitting a video beforehand.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we'd filmed a video after February 1st, once we know which candidates have committed to running.
That's what I was trying to get. Perfect, thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question. How many terms can you serve as director? Is there an end on, or is it?
Yeah, so each term is 3 years, and we recently changed the bylaw to say that you cannot serve more than 4 consecutive terms.
Okay.
At that point, you need to take I believe it's a 2-year break before you can run again. I got that right, Frank and Barry?
Makes sense. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Going once? Twice? There'd be one other thing. I hope everyone considers running. Would be wonderful to have a great slate of candidates to choose from. If for some reason you decide this is not the year, you don't have the time, or there's some other factors involved that would preclude you from running this year, I would ask that you pass on your contact information to Julia so that we can so that we can contact you next year and encourage you to run next year if this year is not the year. Otherwise, I would thank you very much for joining us this evening, and I hope you'll consider it. It's a great board, very professional board. Everyone gets to have their opinions heard. I've really enjoyed my 4 years and would enjoy sharing that experience with you. If there are other questions that arise, as I mentioned earlier, Our phone numbers, email addresses are in the nomination package. Feel free to contact me or Frank or Barry or Julia. And on that note, I will bid us good night.
Thank you so much for giving us part of your evening.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Everybody, thank you.
Thank you.